we just got up there and kind of blasted through the pandemic and played tunes that was basically comfort music, but it's really good. And to get a 5-star review for swinging standards, was just incredible. So I'm definitely going to do some of that kind of music too at the showcase. But I want to feature some of this music that I did with Kurt Rosenwinkel with this group. And I should mention that it's going to be with Michael Stryker and Dennis Carroll and a great drummer from Chicago who's worked with Wynton and everybody else, named Sean Dobbins.
For Chicago Jazz Magazine, ChicagoJazz.com, and welcome to another episode of Around Town. Today I am joined by Jim Snidero. Of course, he's a Grammy-winning sax player, and he is coming into Chicago Tuesday and Wednesday, September 26th and 27th, to perform at the Jazz Showcase, and we're going to talk all about that. He's also coming in as part of, he's doing some clinics, not open to the public, but doing some clinics at UIC for Michael Stryker, who's the department chair over there. And so he's going to hit at the Jazz Showcase on Tuesday and Wednesday. He's going to have a killer group. And Jim, thanks for jumping on. Welcome to Around Town, and it's great to talk to you.
Thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure to see you again, and I'm so excited about this hit at the Jazz Showcase.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about this first, because you've got a new recording, a new release, Far, Far Away. It's featuring Kurt Rosenwinkel. So I know you're going to probably be playing tunes from that. Of course, everybody can go to jimsnidero.com for all the information, but you haven't been back to Chicago to like lead a group in many years, right? So this has to be a pretty cool thing happening.
It is. The last time I played there was maybe 10 years ago, at what's the other venue?
Green Mill or
the Green Mill. Yeah, the Green Mill. And but at the showcase, this is my debut as a leader, because I just never was able to get that together, but I did work there as a sideman quite often. And it just seems bizarre to me that I haven't been to Chicago more often, because I work all over the world, but now's the time, and I'm really pleased about the group, and the new record with Kurt has done really well, so the timing is excellent.
Well, and you got a 5-star review in Downbeat, I think I read, right? I mean, is that's not easy to come by. So obviously,
no, especially it was such a gift, or so I'm so thankful for it. But especially for music, we did standards on that record. It was a live record we did during the pandemic at the famous Deer Head Inn near New York, and it was with Joe Farnsworth and Orrin Evans and Peter Washington. And we just got up there and kind of blasted through the pandemic and played tunes that was basically comfort music, but it's really good. And to get a 5-star review for swinging standards, was just incredible. So I'm definitely going to do some of that kind of music too at the showcase. But I want to feature some of this music that I did with Kurt Rosenwinkel with this group. And I should mention that it's going to be with Michael Stryker and Dennis Carroll and a great drummer from Chicago who's worked with Wynton and everybody else, named Sean Dobbins.
Well, he's coming in from Detroit. Sean Dobbins is coming.
Yes. Right. Sorry.
Yeah. So he's coming in from Detroit, and I don't think he's been in town all that much. So this is going to be something that all the drummers out there, you need to go and check this out. And if you're not familiar with Sean, I encourage everybody to watch some YouTube videos, because it's going to be really swinging. And obviously everybody else knows Michael and Dennis, and Jim's coming in town. And the showcase, of course, 806 South Plymouth Court, jazzshowcase.com, Wayne Siegel, keeping everything alive over there. And for those of you that have not been to the Jazz Showcase, which I cannot imagine there's that many people watching this in Chicago that haven't been, but if you're coming into town, or if you're a student that's going to be able to come and see it, it's like walking into a museum over there, because they have all the artifacts from when Joe Siegel was starting the Jazz Showcase. So there's pictures, there's all sorts of great things. So it's something to definitely go and check out. So Tuesday, Wednesday, 8 o'clock show, 10 o'clock show, September 26th, 27th. And you're coming in town also, and you're going to be doing clinics at UIC and working with that jazz program there as well. How have you known Michael for a while? Because Michael's done such fabulous stuff over there at the University of Illinois Chicago Jazz to build a jazz studies program like that right in the heart of the city?
Well, actually, I met him a long time ago when he was teaching at Eastern Illinois University. I came in to do a concert there with the big band, and we met and we started playing together. And I loved his playing. And then we did a duet concert and some other gigs. And then he went over to Western Illinois University, and then he got the job in Chicago. So I've known him for maybe 20 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Great pianist. And I'm happy to work with those students over at the university too.
Well, and let's talk a little bit, because I know that, you know, you've written the Essence of Bebop book back years ago, but I know it's one of those popular books. Everybody has it. All the up and coming jazz musicians have gone through it. It's almost like an Ebersol type thing, because I remember seeing it all around the place when I was in college. But why don't we talk a little bit about how important it is? And, you know, I always try to relate some of this stuff to like younger musicians, or even musicians that are trying to grow, maybe not professional, but they're learning how to grow. How important is it just to learn tunes? Because I'm looking at a lot of musicians these days, especially the younger ones, and they're coming in with their iPads and they're reading the stuff and they can play over changes, but they're not really internalizing tunes the way when I was coming up in the 90s, we had to know tunes. We had to know all 12 keys. We had to be able to play over them at all different tempos. I don't know if education-wise, if that's really happening these days or not, but talk a little bit about how important that is and how that's helped you in your playing.
Well, I mean, listen, if you're going to listen to the best jazz of all time, which for me is the classic records in, you know, especially in the 50s and the 60s, they're basically playing on tunes, more or less. And so, you know, this is kind of the blueprint for improvisation that these guys are playing on. And those kinds of tunes are kind of the basis for most of jazz that's played today. Not everything. There's some modal kind of music and some other experimental things, but I would say the vast majority of jazz that's still played today is based on forms and chord changes to standards. And it's a really great way to learn how to play any kind of jazz. And if you're a student, at least the way that we used to do it, and I think it's the best way still, you really want to learn how to play, you've got to transcribe solos and figure out what they're doing and emulate that until you've internalized it. Then you kind of make it into your own. And that's kind of a hard road, but that's the best way to do it. It's the quickest way from point A to point B. And you're going to be doing it over tunes. So, and on the other practical side of that is that if you're a working jazz musician, or you're someone that's going to do gigs as a jazz musician, say, you know, at a bar or for some kind of social event or whatever, you might not have ever played with the musicians that you're going to, and so you're going to walk in and, you know, you're going to have to play tunes probably. And looking at the iPad or whatever, a book, you know, is probably not going to let you perform to your highest level, because you haven't internalized the form and the changes and the concept about how to get through that kind of music. So from both a practical side and a nuts and bolts language side and an artistic side, it's the quickest way to get it together.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? Is because you want to know where the music came from. It's just like anything else. If you're in business, you want to know why you're doing this. Then you can go back 50 years and look at why people did it a certain way to get to a certain point. It's the same thing with music. And the beauty, to your point, you can go back and transcribe the masters playing over the same changes you're going to play over, which tells you a lot about the internalization of the music. And then you can first learn that. That's how then you develop your own voice, right?
Absolutely.
Take it to another level.
Absolutely.
So when you're playing, and I mean, we'll talk a little bit about this. Of course, you're coming into town Tuesday and Wednesday, September 26th and 27th at the Jazz Showcase. Michael Stryker, Dennis Carroll, Sean Dobbins joining you. It's going to be swinging. Of course, everything's at jazzshowcase.com. You know, when you first started performing and starting to play, and you got out of college and you started, and you played in so many different genres and so many different styles with so many different directors and band leaders and running your own groups and everything else. I mean, what's that through line as far as playing goes? Because I know you've played jazz, you played some funk, you played rock, blues, whatever, you know, but you found your own voice. When did you really realize that, you know what, this is actually Jim Snidero playing over these tunes, and I'm not trying to copy anybody anymore. You know, was there a point where you're like, you know what, I feel really comfortable in my playing. I'm just going to blow, forget it. And I'm not going to worry about what anybody else is saying, because I feel like I'm confident in my playing.
Well, being confident and finding your own voice are kind of two different things, because you know, I think the confidence comes from understanding the language and understanding the instrument, and all the hard work that you've put into both of those things gives you the confidence to know, you know, it helps you to relax and just do your thing. As far as my voice is concerned, I think a lot of it started probably when I did the strings record about 20 years ago in the early 2000s, which was a very successful record. And I started to hear my voice a little bit more over top of a totally different setting for me. I had composed and arranged all the music. It was something, a huge undertaking. And I felt like at that point, I really was starting to write a lot, you know, write and arrange more. And, you know, you're going to have your voice when you're writing music usually. And then so you're going to be playing over that, and they kind of go hand in hand. And suddenly you realize that there are certain things that you like that you're doing all the time that are actually unique. They're you. They might be small things, and a lot of times they are small things. There are things about articulation or a certain way that you put a line together. You know, everybody's got their preferences as to the timing of things and the way that they like to shape ideas. You know, that comes from your influences, but eventually you find your own way, even if you don't really realize it, especially if you work very hard at it. There's a certain thing that you favor, and you start doing that. And when you realize that's you, then you can kind of capitalize on it. So I think it's about 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love hearing artists, especially someone like you who's played with so many different people and written so much music and composed so much. Just talk about that, because I think people, you know, they get frustrated when they're starting out and they're starting to play, especially with some of the university kids you're playing, you know, you're going to be working with at UIC when you come into town. They're probably hitting a wall sometimes, but hearing different things from musicians like yourself and just getting through and getting to the next thing, get over that hurdle and fight through it to get to the next hurdle. That's really half the battle of actually playing, in addition to practicing. But you know, you always hit that wall and you're like, oh my God, I can't, this is unbelievable. And then you have to sit and you got to work through stuff, right? I mean, that's the hardest part of everything.
It really is, and this is so appropriate. I'll never forget when I read what Michael Jordan said, which ties perfectly into Chicago back a long time ago. He said, "Listen, you know, I ran into walls, and you just eventually you climb over that wall, and you get to the next one." And I don't remember how he finished it out, but for me anyway, at one point you're through the building, you're over the walls, and you see the light, and you go, "Ah." It was all kind of in front of you, but sometimes, I mean, a lot of it is, sometimes you just have to go through the process of enlightenment until you finally realize, there it is, that's it, you know, a certain problem or whatever.
Right. Well, I totally agree. I'm glad you said that. And well, all right. So I want to make sure everybody knows, go and see Jim with the group here. So Jim Snidero, Tuesday and Wednesday, September 26th, 27th at the Jazz Showcase. 806 South Plymouth Court, right there in the South Loop. Of course, $5 parking behind the place, but there's also plenty of street parking. So there's no excuses not to go and see this group on that Tuesday and Wednesday, 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock.
And I wanted to say one thing too, that I really hope that students will come down. You know, a lot of them have my jazz conception book or bebop book and things like that. And I'm planning on giving some books away to students. I'm not sure how many, if it's going to be 5 or 10 or 15 per night, but I would love to see some students come down, and I'll be happy to sign books, and I'm going to give some away too.
Well, that's perfect. And it's all ages too, I believe, on Tuesday and Wednesday. So everybody head on out. No matter what school you go to, and go and check this group out. Of course, JimSnidero.com, the new release, Far, Far Away, featuring Kurt Rosenwinkel. You'll hear all of that, and go see Jim and the group in person and say hi, of course. I'm sure he'd love to say hi to you if you came down to see everybody. So Jim, thanks for jumping on. It is great to reconnect with you. And I am going to try to get over there one of those nights and meet you in person again.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for everything.
Absolutely. And of course, I want to thank everybody for watching. As I always say, all the information is at chicagojazz.com. And until next time, hopefully I will see somebody out on the scene.